Hi, third grade readers, it's Miss Puzio, and in today's student-facing video, I am going to help you make inferences while reading the passage When the Giant Stirred. So we are in Module 10, Lesson 4, and our focus question is, why is it important to pass stories down to the next generation? So again, we are in Lesson 4, and our focus is inferencing. Today's focus question is, how do I make an inference to help me understand a text? So I'm sure at this point in the year we have done and you have seen inferencing many times, but it is completely okay for you to forget what an inference is, even though we do it all the time without realizing. Let's just look at a little chart after we look at our objective just to remind us. So our objective today is to make inferences and use text evidence to support or prove and develop understanding. So we're going to review how to make an inference. We're going to read some portions aloud of When the Giant Stirred. And then you guys are going to do some independent reading, make inferences to understand your own text that you choose, and probably do some small group reading instruction with your teacher or on your own. So we're going to continue reading When the Giant Stirred, either together or on your own, and let's review. This story is a legend, and a legend is a story from the past that is believed by many people but cannot be proven to be true. And authors of legends tell the story through the plot. The events of a legend are thought to be based on real events. Authors of legends use sensory details and figurative language to develop the setting and characters. Legends include the beliefs and ideas of a culture. So a lot of the time they make up a story to try and explain how something came to be, even though it's probably really not the truth of how it came to be. So a long time ago, we didn't have all of this research and science to explain how these things came to be, so we came up with these legends and myths to explain those things. So remember, authors may not always tell us everything in a text. Sometimes we have to make inferences to help us understand the text. So let's take a look at this anchor chart. Make inferences to review how to make an inference. So what we do is we use text evidence or illustrations or photographs, plus our background knowledge, which is everything you already know from your life experiences, other things you have read. You always have to activate that, and that equals understanding. So sometimes we have to fill in the blanks or fill in some holes from things that the author is not directly telling us, and that is how we make an inference. So I want you to follow along in your book, either in front of you or online, and then we're going to make some inferences together. I'm going to answer some questions with you. Okay, here we go. So again, just one more time, I wanted to pull up another picture that I think is really helpful, just to remind you what making an inference is. So you're kind of like a detective, and readers use story clues and what they know to discover what is not directly stated in the text. So text clues or pictures plus background knowledge, what you already know, equals your inference. Like I've said in a previous video, if I walk in and I have an umbrella and a raincoat, and you have to infer what type of weather it is outside, I may not directly tell you, but you can infer it's raining because you know that's the type of gear you use when it's raining, even if I don't directly tell you. What you see plus what you know equals the inference. So I've made this table for you to look at the questions we have to answer, and then we'll look at the text plus illustration clues, our background knowledge, and the inference. So we're going to look at, how did the people feel when the giant stirred? Why do the birds leave the island? Why did the people climb up the mountainside? And what inference can you make about the island people from this story? Detail. So I want you to answer that last question. Well, the first question I have, how did the people feel when the giant stirred? I want you to have some time to answer some questions on your own. So some of these we'll do together and some you'll do on your own. So the first one we'll do together is, why do the birds leave the island? And you'll notice that keyword there is why. Anytime an author or your teacher or anyone asks you why, that's kind of like a cause and effect question, right? Why? When you are asked why, you're being asked a reason. So we want to know the reason the birds leave the island. So we're going to look at the text clues, our background knowledge, and make an inference, and I'm going to model thinking out loud for you. So I'm going to go to that part of the text here. So it says here, the chief of the village gathered his people around him. He told them that the birds were the messengers of the gods. He said that when the birds left, the mountain would awake in anger, and no amount of flowers would appease their mountain god now. The chief told his people it was time to leave their beautiful island home. The people did as they were told. They gathered their belongings and hurried with them to the beach. They loaded their boats. Now, you'll notice in this section here, the author does not tell you why the birds leave. But I'm seeing here that after the birds leave, the chief is now telling him, oh man, you guys have to leave now. So first, let's see what the text is telling us. The chief is telling the people that the birds were the messengers and that the birds left, and now the mountain is going to be angry now that the birds left. So let's start to type that in here. Text and illustration clues. The chief tells the people that the birds left and the mountain will be angry. And now they must leave too. Okay, so now let's use some background knowledge here. Let's think about what we know about birds, what we know about animals, and when there's danger. So something I can think about, birds, what they do, maybe when it's wintertime. I know birds fly south when the winter, birds fly away when it's cold, and I know that animals also fly away when there's danger. Birds fly away when there's danger. Animals sense danger. So the background knowledge I can activate is birds or animals usually leave when they sense danger is coming. So now the inference that we can form together is I can infer that the birds left because they knew that the mountain is going to cause danger or destruction. So while it's not generally directly stated in the passage, we use what we know about birds, we use what the text said, and we can make that inference. Okay, so I'm going to do one more with you. Why do the people climb up the mountainside? So let's take a look there. So we're at this point in the text, and we see the people climbing up the mountainside. So let's see what happens here. So they scrambled up the mountainside of their new island as fast as they could go. When they were safely out of reach, they stopped and looked back as the great tidal wave swept toward them. For days afterward, huge waves crashed against the shore. For weeks afterward, the sky was black with smoke and cinders rained down from above. But the people were safe in their new island home, and they began to build a village. But what of the old island? Okay, so let's take a look at our question. Why did the people climb up the mountainside? So text illustration clues. Okay, so I see waves almost crashing into them. And then the text also says a great tidal wave swept toward them. Okay, and then background knowledge. What can we infer about a giant wave almost crashing into them or a great tidal wave? We can infer that a giant tidal wave would hurt them. And why would you climb up a mountain? And climbing somewhere higher would help escape the wave. So what inference can we make? We can infer they climbed up the mountain so they could stay safe from the giant crashing waves. So we use what we knew plus what we saw. So then the last question, and the last two questions I want you to try on your own is, what inference can you make about the island people from the story detail? So based on the fact that they climbed up the mountainside when the tidal wave was coming, what can you say about them as the people? What can you say about them? What inference can you make about them based on the fact that they climbed up the mountain when they saw that coming? And then finally, how did the people feel when the giant stirred? It's never stated in the text exactly how they felt, but I want you to pay attention to this part right here. When the giant stirred, the people of the village took garlands of flowers up the mountain and threw them in the crater at the top. They prayed that the sweet, heavy scent of the flowers would put their mountain god back to sleep and give him pleasant dreams. So look at the illustration, look at this section here, okay? And that's what I want you to think about. How did the people feel when the giant stirred? Okay, use those clues, go back to the passage, and I want you to answer those two questions for me, and hopefully this helped you with making inferences.